In business, a company's growth potential is defined by an organization's future ability to generate larger profits, expand its workforce, and increase production. Daniel Curtis describes himself as a lifelong autodidact who thrives in high pressure and complex situations. He excels at transforming businesses to help them reach their maximum level of potential. Building international teams rapidly, prototyping solutions, and building complex systems simply yet eloquently. He says he's constantly seeking ways to apply his knowledge to improve the environment around him. He enjoys teaching, mentoring, and educating those around him. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Enroll ML, where they utilize data science activity, direction engine, make post-secondary enrollment teams better at what they do every day. Curtis joined me this week to have a conversation about technology, building teams, optimizing productivity, and so much more. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's have this conversation. So Daniel, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend. And I'm super excited to learn all about your journey in entrepreneurship. Great to see you today, buddy, and happy Wisconsin Saturday.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Yeah, it's a nice day here in Wisconsin, and it's a great time to have a conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, there's never a bad time to have a quality conversation there, Daniel. And then tell me that you're a lifelong autodidact, buddy, who loves solving sort of complex problems and coming up with solutions. So I'm wondering if you can tell me all about it.
Sure. So it's hard to summarize if you don't have a little context, right? When I was younger, I just kind of I've always looked at the world as something that as opportunity, as potential, right? So I don't see it for always what it is, maybe the more concrete element. And what I found was that I could pursue a great number of things. I had a lot of curiosity in things, and I was just I wanted to learn as much as I could from the youngest age. And it took me a long time to realize that wasn't the same for everybody, and that my ability to learn things might be a little bit different than the average person. So and maybe that sounds weird. It even sounds weird when I say it sometimes, right? Because I'm not, I don't think I'm better than anybody. It's certainly not that. It's just when I want to learn something, I just go do it. I go read about it, I figure it out, I play with it, and I make it work. And so I've just taken that approach to life here. And it's I think that ultimately, I think it's that curiosity that drives me to find a better way to do things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, and you use that curiosity now, my friend, to help maximize businesses and helping them reach their fullest potential by building international teams and prototyping solutions. So I'm wondering if you can tell me all about the good work that you do.
Oh yeah. So I've spent probably the past 20 years in the information technology space, across multiple verticals, domains, healthcare, government, finance, manufacturing, to name a few. And the problems in those domains are different. The technologies are the same, which was kind of what was always curious. But then it becomes a matter of, you have all these options, you have all this capability, you have all these companies that want to sell you things, you have all these solutions, but how do you put them together in the best way? And better yet, when you're going to put them together, right? When you're ultimately, what are you doing? You're solving a problem, right, Kevin? So what problem are we trying to solve? That problem varies, but the underlying problem seems to be pretty fluid. And to really solve the underlying problems, we actually need people, right? Because no matter what we do, we're all engaged with each other, right? And you take this conversation, you could take it to any number of conversations that you would have at work or with your family or with your friends or whoever it may be. And in order for us to when I look at the business process, when I look at the problems, when I look at technology, again, I see more opportunity, right? So building the right team to work and to run the technology and to deliver the technology, to me, became the next evolution. Yeah, it's easy to engineer a solution to fix a problem through engineering, like theoretically, right? It's more difficult to actually own it, run it, and make it perform well for a long time. And to do that, we have to build really capable teams. And I've had the great pleasure, Kevin, of building these teams around the world, with people from all types of backgrounds and all types of geographies, and really be able to bring a lot of opportunity to a lot of people that wouldn't have it otherwise. So for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that mentoring is a big part of your passion and making sure that you pass along the knowledge that you've learned along the way. So tell me about the importance of business mentoring and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, again, I think that's an excellent question, Kevin. So when I look back at my life and see where I've come, right? There were always people that were willing to help me. Maybe it was friends, maybe it's family, maybe it's people that I had just met who saw potential in me. And then I thought, there's nothing greater, I think, that we can give to anybody in life. Almost a lot of people say time. We all share the same amount of time, right? So then I thought, what might be greater than that, right? What helped shape me? What helped shape you? What helped shape everybody to be the best that they can be? That's what we should want in our society. That's what we should want as individuals and as collectively. So I've always enjoyed that thoroughly, and I can't even tell you why I enjoy it. But the whole, if I can teach someone what I know about anything, if it's technical, if it's about business, if it's about leadership, if it's about any topic, anything that I know about, I enjoy doing that. I thoroughly enjoy doing that. And to see people reach a level of potential that they couldn't even see for themselves, I think that's even better, right? I don't know if you can relate to that or not, but I mean, it's certainly been a big impact for me.
Yeah, Daniel, I always say that your level of fulfillment will naturally be fulfilled if you pay it forward and really find your moment of impact in life, right? So absolutely. And Daniel, I'm curious to ask you about your definition of personal diversification. And what I mean by that is, how do you define being diversified and very nimble at work in order to experience different things and really broaden your knowledge base? So what's your definition of personal and professional diversification?
So I think this is interesting, Kevin. I've thought about this a little bit in recent times as I was reflecting back on kind of my career path and where I've come. And a lot of that, it required me to be diverse in thinking. It required me to be diverse in perhaps the risks that I was willing to take, to even try new things, right? Because I think what happens with a lot of people, in my perception, we get comfortable with something and we don't want to push the envelope. We don't want to perhaps learn something new because we're already comfortable with what we already know. So when I look at, my own professional diversification, I started in one area of technology many years ago, and I've touched almost every area of technology since then. And as I look back at that, it's been very important to me for my professional development. I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't have a good grasp of how all of these things worked. Right. But I think it goes back to that original point about being very curious about what it is. So I think the curiosity was the driver for my own personal professional diversity here, and not really locking myself, excuse me, into excuse me, into one box. Right. So I would encourage people to be more professionally diverse, to be open to opportunity, and not really think of the world as a set thing, because it certainly isn't.
Yeah, and to that point, I also wanted to ask you about diversity of perspective. As you know, Daniel, from doing your research on me, I was born with cerebral palsy, and part of the reason that I am so successful is that I try to maximize my influence and exposure to technology. So tell me, how do you think we can diversify technology to the point where folks with disabilities can really maximize their fullest potential in terms of business and otherwise professional? I'm curious to get your answer there.
No, I like that. Obviously, you share a very unique perspective with this, Kevin, given your condition. When I was growing up, I had a good friend of mine whose cousin suffered from the same ailment that you do. And this was in the late 90s when he was going through high school at the time. And it was very, very difficult for him because we don't have the same access. And, I think about that too. It's because when you think about technology, I mean, he was very severe. He had to move with his tongue, like he could talk, but he couldn't do much else. Like he would move a mouse that they had created so he could play a video game with his eyes, right? With his tongue. So, so what did I get from that? He could play the game just as well as anybody else with that, with playing it with his eyes and with his tongue. So that's technology at play. So then you think about that. What does that mean? We're here, right? It doesn't matter if you physically can't run, you can still think, which means you can still contribute just as fully to any of this technological space or to a great number of things and share a very unique perspective with the rest of the world, right? So I think anything that we're doing to even be able to facilitate this conversation, to be able to help people live a fuller life, I think that's all great. That is the direction that we should be going in, because we're trying to bring the best out of everybody. That's what we should be trying to do.
Yeah, and just one follow-up in that regard. I wonder your thoughts on how technology has really moved the needle of progress forward in terms of inclusivity and really opening up doors to explore different career paths.
Oh yeah. I think so. One of the things that happened here with the pandemic that we can look back on is, look, how many people are working remotely now? How many people are using remote conferencing and everything else to meet with people in real time, just like you and I are right now, right? So I think some of the technology had been there, but it hadn't been quite adopted yet. And I think that it's things like this where we don't always have a clear path. Like, yeah, the technology, I guess what I'm saying here, Kevin, is that a lot of the technologies that we could be using to provide that extra inclusivity for people with disability or otherwise, a lot of it, there's a lot of options right now. And I think we just need to continue to adopt those options and drive the development of other technologies that would assist. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, if the way that I looked at it was, I mean, heck, there's no reason why you can't do a job from where you're sitting, right?
Yeah, I really think, as you know, Daniel, that technology is a real driver of inclusive employment. Before I hosted this podcast, Daniel, I ran a program here in Ontario called the discoverability network here in Windsor and Essex County, and it was an online job matching portal for individuals with disabilities and employers to get connected. So it was an online platform that I was the ambassador for about 13 months, and during at that time we got 70 individuals either an internship or a job placement. So I really think that technology has been a real game changer in the field of employment and also in the field of societal inclusion as well. And Daniel, I know that you recently started a podcast, buddy, called the Unknowing. So tell me about the podcast and the messages you're trying to deliver through the platform, buddy.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think it's kind of a good segue into that, Kevin. So I was actually injured pretty severely last March. I had a class C spinal cord injury, and I lost all feeling in my entire body, hot, cold, pain, everything. I still had most motor function, a little bit lost on the right side of my body. Since then, I've been recovering, but it's been a slow process. And this is the first time I've really spoken about that publicly. The net of that was I just kind of sat back and I looked at my life. There were plenty of things that I wanted to do, and there were plenty of things that I hadn't done, right? And I thought to myself, it's probably time to start taking action on things that I haven't done. And part of what I've found is that when I look at society again, when I look at all of us living together, working together, we should be trying to bring the best out of each other. That has to be the end goal of society if we want to thrive and we want to be well. And so I had the idea. I said, you know what, I want to start a podcast. I called it the All Unknowing. I called it the All Unknowing because when you know something, you're kind of set in your ways. You don't try to learn new ways anymore. You think that's the way, and maybe it worked for a time. Maybe it worked for a particular time and place. Maybe it didn't. Maybe we just haven't pursued it. I don't know. I don't know why. That's human nature, psychology, everything else in between. But the idea was to start discussing societal topics that, frankly, I think need to be discussed more openly, and to try to find a better way forward by exploring some of that unknown territory and being open to new ideas, concepts, and change.
Yeah, that's part of the reason that I wanted to start this podcast, Daniel. You know, also often in the news cycle, Daniel, we're confronted with only the most dire
Yes.
situation or dire circumstance. So I wanted to start this podcast to sort of bridge the gap of unity that we are currently experiencing. So I'll ask my next question this way. How do you think we bridge that gap of societal unity? And what's your definition of societal transformation?
I like where you're again. I really like where you're at here, Kevin. I think you got a good head on your shoulders here. So I'll take up the first one. So if I think about transformational societal change, right? It's not easy. I think, first of all, I mean, here we all find ourselves with, like you said on the news, plenty of reasons why we can dislike each other, or plenty of things that we can get up in arms about. But we stop focusing so much on all of the other things that are actually going well. So I think, first of all, I view it as a problem of perception, right? Because with human nature, it seems like we're drawn to what's not working well, and we focus on that. But then I think sometimes when we focus on that, we lose sight of that big picture. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And when we lose sight of that big picture, then I think we forget everything else that's actually going well. Like the fact that you and I can have this conversation. We're of vastly different backgrounds, certainly, right? We've lived vastly different life experiences, most likely. But we can still sit down and have a conversation. It doesn't matter what our political affiliation or beliefs are. It doesn't matter because we're still human beings. I think that's what's been lost. And I think that's that's the ultimate societal transformational change that I think needs to be happening around the world.
Yeah, and I'm curious to just follow up by asking you about how do you think we get people to sort of eliminate their attitudinal barriers long enough to sort of eliminate their fixed stance on an issue in order to grow as a person? Because you can have influences in your life, whether they're positive or negative, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to sort of make the decision on the direction of your life. So how do you think we can challenge people's expectations to help them grow as
It's a very interesting question. I think first they have to be willing, right? So we have to have willing participants. And I think it kind of ties back into what we were talking about a few minutes ago. Again, because if you think you know something, if you know with absolute that something is absolutely true, right? Then that's a tough barrier to break when we're having a conversation with somebody. I think the first step, Kevin, is to start having conversations with individuals and stop jumping on to a given ideology. And again, start talking to people as human beings and start leading the lives that we want to see, be the change that we want to see. Right. And I think that's the first step to the removal of the barriers, as far as I'm concerned, societally. I mean, there are, but this concept of barriers in society is an age-old problem, right? I mean, even in India, there's a Hindu god, Ganesh, who is actually known as the remover of barriers. So they have a deity in their religious structure that's dedicated essentially to the removal of barriers. And I thought that was also kind of interesting, that I think it's something that's been there for a long time, but it's this ebb and flow between conservatism, which is what's been working well, and liberalism, which is the progressive change that we think will work, and trying to find out where that unity is between those, that we can pull each other forward, right? But I ultimately, Kevin, I think it has to start with the individual, right? Because we can't have no leader can tell us that we have to act a certain way, right? Because we're all individuals, we're all human beings. I think we have to want and we have to show. And I think when we do that, people will follow.
It goes back to the age-old adage that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right?
100%. I mean, you're absolutely right.
You know, Devin, the last two business questions I had for you is, I know that you help people sort of transform their business operations if they want to expand their business. So tell me, Daniel, about some goals that people should have if they want to expand their business. I'm curious. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So the goals people should have, right? So I think the first thing, Kevin, is to have a goal, right? Because if you don't have any goals, then you don't know. Well, you don't have anything to measure against. So first, you need a goal, right? And then two, you need to make sure that you can measure that goal. Because if you're not actually measuring yourself against it, then it's going to be very difficult for you to understand even where you're at, right? So first thing is a goal. Second thing is a way to measure it. Third is a plan, right? How are we going to get there, right? Hey, I want to be a billionaire. Okay, that's great. How are you going to do that, right? So there's a lot of stuff to fill in between. And what I found is that there's typically a lot of opportunity around us if we slightly change our perception on what it is that we're trying to accomplish, right? So I have customers where they might say, hey, we're having a lot of problem with this, or this is taking us so much time, or we have, whatever it may be. And I might say, hey, look, we can get you specific resources that are highly skilled and trained on that. And then you can go from doing 3 of those a day to 30, right? So that helps them process more orders. So maybe it's a processing inefficiency. Maybe it's a technology challenge. Maybe it's a regulatory thing. So it's about analyzing that path to that goal and the individual steps that you're going to take, or that someone's going to take on your behalf to get you there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when people ask me that question, Daniel, I tell them three steps. What's the goal? What's the time frame? And what are your resources, right?
Right.
And then once you answer those three questions, expansion of any, whether it be business or your life goals, is easier. But I also know, Daniel, that you're the lead technology officer for a company called Emerald MI. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about the good work that you do, buddy.
Yeah. So at that particular venture, I'm serving as the chief technology officer currently, and we're helping enrollment leaders at higher education universities really uncover and lead their enrollment teams to find the best candidates for their university, so that they're basically applying their time most efficiently as possible. And we're doing this through a complex system that we've designed to really take all the complexity out of that. So we're using artificial intelligence and a lot of other stuff in between to really make this available to our customers on a daily basis. So it allows them to see which resources they should be contacting, why they should be contacting them, right? Which potential students, and how they need to engage them. And this is all aimed at driving higher enrollment rates and yields for the individual universities. Basically, so it helps them spend their time and money, the resources towards the goal of getting enrollments, right? So this is the solution for the particular problem. So not too different from what we just talked about, but this is the middle part there.
Absolutely. Everybody deserves a future, right?
Yeah, I think so, right? Absolutely. We should want to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm just circling back to something we talked about earlier. I'm curious to ask you, how do you define fundamental progress towards a more inclusive future?
Yeah. So again, I think we start along the same lines here, right? So one, we need some kind of goal, right? We need some way to measure it. And the progress has to be set from the individual. But we also need to be more active, right? I think as a collective, we need to be more active. Part of that's awareness, right? If we don't know about something, we can't fix it, right? So I think awareness is a big thing as far as that goes. I mean, you can see that through history, I believe, right? I mean, if the problem sits under the rug all day, who's going to fix it, right? We have to lift the rug up and find it, and then we can start moving forward. But it's not necessarily business related, but it's still human function, right? So again, we need a goal, we need a way to measure it, and we need a plan.
Yeah, and then my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
This is not something that I've ever thought of, actually, which might be strange to some of your listeners. I don't know. But having not really thought about it, I think when I was younger, I wanted, the one thought that I had from a young age was that I wanted to leave the world a better place than I found it. So I'm not sure in what all forms that will take, but it's certainly a motivational choice for the decisions that I make on a daily basis. So.
Yeah, and just one follow-up in terms of a life motto, but I'm curious if you have sort of life principles or sort of non-negotiables that you live your life.
Yeah. Well, I'd say inherently, I will always do what I think is right. I don't regard the consequences for my actions as the direction for the choice. And I try to live in a way that enables people to be the best versions of themselves, to draw the best out of the people around me. I think, and it's not always easy, but it's something that I think, I don't know. I just kind of was born this way, I think. And I think I was on another podcast a few weeks ago and they asked me a similar question. And I thought, what's the greatest thing that I value in life? And I said creation. And that comes in many forms. The ability to create in and of itself, for us to go and solve problems, for us to create solutions for problems, for us to may have people live better lives with less suffering, right? To think about the world around us and the universe and everything that exists here and in between. You know, I'm grateful for the ability to exist, and I try to make the most of it.
Yes, indeed. You know, life is too short. I always say that life is a grand adventure, and we're all responsible for maximizing our level of influence, aren't we?
No, we have to be, because no one else controls our actions, right? It's our life, right? It's no one else's, and we have to have that viewpoint, or we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, we only have one life to live in. Daniel, tell me if people want to get connected with the good work that you do, both personally or professionally. What's the best way they can do that, Bonnie?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website. It's theallunknowing.com. That's our podcast website. We post on there. The episodes are updated. And you can find me on Twitter and on LinkedIn with the name Daniel-R-Curtis.
Well, Daniel, I have to tell you that this conversation probably was the highlight of my weekend, and I really want to thank you for your in-depth perspective on technology, life, and everything in between, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation and for joining me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Kevin, it's absolutely my pleasure, and I really thank you for having me on the show today, and I wish you the best of luck as you continue and pursue this journey in your life.